So what this is about is our future and our present, and having a quality of life here. People have moved on. We need to have our politicians move on.
No kidding.
First, though, I want to thank you to all of you who have taken time to come out here. I know that this is not easy to do. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for anybody to take time because we're kept so busy just trying to live. Particularly, I want to point out that there's a real upwelling of citizens, of rural citizens, of town citizens, of city citizens in Southern Oregon in regards to Senator Wyden's and Representative DeFazio's plans for public forest land. And that's of great concern to us, and it's of great concern to me as a family farmer, because that is where my water comes from. And water is very critical to us all. And for sustainable living, having clean, healthy water is really important. And those plans that Wyden is coming up with that will become law, and that DeFazio is coming up with that may become law, or some combination thereof, are both very, very bad for all of us in comparison to 1% of the people here, the industry, corporate timber industry. And this is about helping the 99% of us live sustainably. Thank you to Ann Dorsey for organizing this rally. Thank you to Denny Miller for giving, from DB Pro Audio, for donating this audio system. This is awesome. And it just goes to show you that people really care. Thank you for Ann Chamberlain for keeping track of the pilot timber sale, which is an example timber sale associated with what Wyden's law will be. And something that you should definitely go and see if you have not. There are 2 timber sales. One's already been logged. It's called Buck Rising. The other is called White Castle. It has not yet been logged. And it is a water sponge forest. The idea of it being clear-cut log is just totally insane. So thank you for Ann for helping monitor that and for coming to talk to us here. And somewhere around here is Alicia Gay. Here she comes. She's our business supporter. And thank you, Alicia, for supporting us from Medicine Flower. A really good example of a future business that could be very successful and is very successful here in our community. That's the kind of businesses that can be drawn here and that have been drawn here. Again, we know we're moving on. We can't figure out why the politicians don't realize that we're moving on. So what I'd like to do now is focus on different topics in association with what Senator Wyden and Representative DeFazio are trying to do with the timber industry to destroy our water and to destroy our healthy public forests. And so I'm going to ask people to come up and speak in association with the economic aspects of that, the sustainability aspects of that. I also want us to talk about subsidies and how much the timber industry is actually subsidized, and what that impact of subsidizing the timber industry, again, does to the rest of us 99%. So let's see here. With that, I think I'd like to ask Ann Chamberlain to come up and speak about the pilot timber sales around her home and my home that affects her farm and land and my farm and land.
I haven't done this since 1965, for heaven's sakes. Okay. Why did my husband and I move here? Miss Douglas County is the best county and the best state and the best country in the world. That's why. Hold the mic closer. Hold the mic closer. Okay. Douglas County is the best county in the best state, in the best country. But It isn't going to stay that way if they keep cutting the trees. The Umpqua Valley has things found nowhere else in the world. Wildflowers, mushrooms, birds, fish, mammals, geology. Everybody forgets geology. Fossils, big trees, clear streams, and clean air, just to name a few. All of these features can be used for a thriving economy, but not if we cut all the big trees, and the native forest will disappear, and then the animals and plants will disappear, and then we don't have an attraction.
Right.
Why shouldn't Roseburg become a mecca for tourists?
Why not?
There's no reason other than the grip of industrial timber and the fictitious jobs being created by this new variable density clear-cutting plan that they're on. Okay. We have easily accessible areas where you can see Mariposa lilies, nesting spotted owls, mountain quail, blue grouse, red tree voles, spawning salmon, fall chanterelles, spring truffles, gold panning, incredible vistas, pack mules, horseback trekking, river rafting, fishing and hunting galore. And by the way, where else can you go to find the junction of three tectonic plates?
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of you don't, if you don't know what that is, check it out. What we don't have is a good infrastructure to attract ecotourists. Great small inns, incredible food, and Umpqua wines can support our communities with good paying jobs for a long time to come. Good guides earn good money.
Yeah.
My part of the world is the headwaters of Buck Fork, a major tributary of North Myrtle Creek. Unfortunately, the only section of BLM land up there, Section 17, was selected for the pilot project because it was convenient. That's a quote from a BLM spokesman. This section was last harvested in the 50s, and many of the higher areas were left covered with 100-plus-year-old trees. There's a picture of those 100-plus-year-old trees today. Okay. It's surrounded by private industrial timber on two sides, which have been recently harvested. Third side is land the owners trying to preserve for wildlife. Big trees are gone. Mushrooms we used to harvest are gone. The blue grouse are gone. The spotted owls are gone. And more importantly, Buck Fork is being destroyed. For almost 20 years, there was a big beaver dam and wetland. Salmon spawned and fry lived there safely all winter instead of being washed downstream. In 2003, they began cutting. The beaver have been unable to maintain a dam over any subsequent winter due to the high flows that come down off those treeless mountains. The streams being down cut, the bank is eroding, the side channels are filled with sediment that has been washed down. BLM, I don't think, considered the downstream effect of this additional water flow, despite what they say. This timber sale comes on top of all the private industrial timber. If they'd bothered to talk to the landowners downstream, I don't think we'd be looking at what we see today. Up there are tree islands of 3 to 6 trees, exposed and standing almost naked without enough crown left to support growth. Slash piles are covered with black plastic, awaiting immolation. The roads are now exposed to the elements and are subject to washing out instead of being protected by the tree canopy. The creation of more edge is a very, very harmful practice for woodland species. Edge means exposing a side of what was forest. Most woodland species need to be 200 yards away from any edge in order to be safe from predation. The edge habitat is prime hunting territory for barred owls and very poor habitat for red tree voles and flying squirrels, the primary food source for the spotted owl. Early cereal species that they are promoting love edge. They're very adaptable. They can find edge. They don't need us to create more. How has our personal life been affected? Waking every morning to the 4:30 log truck for 14 straight months, the trucks with their jake brakes blowing on the way down, endangering our livestock and scaring them. Much of my wildlife sanctuary is being destroyed because of the lack of water, and frankly, I'm tired. The water in the creek is now so low, we have blue-green algae growing. The salmon fry have virtually no place to go because the step pool structure has been destroyed. The same devastating effect on local water will occur everywhere these proposed harvesting plants are allowed to go through. The forest holds the water, and when it's gone, neither water nor forest will be back quickly, and certainly not in my lifetime. So thank you for your support.
I wanted to read a quote that came from the News Review Sunday, September 1st, the very last statement, and this was the editor article, an editorial timber harvest. They were picking on an organization, but what they said at the very end was significant to me. And by the way, I'm not representing any organization, and this was not put together by any organization. It was put together by concerned citizens and farmers, family farmers that need their water and see where we need to go to have sustainable living and healthy living here. But anyway, back to this article, I quote, "Sustainable timber harvests on public lands that are based on science and do not harm wildlife or affect our clean water need to be a part of Oregon's future. Otherwise, the most endangered places in the state will be the homes of rural Oregonians." I agree with that. But the trouble is that the interpretations being made are not science by any stretch. I know that because I'm a wildlife biologist and I know what science is, and this isn't it. I would like to now ask Richard Chasm to come up and speak about some of the history in terms of the industry and its impacts to us local citizens.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Ann Dorsey. It's hard to follow Ann Chamberlain there, but I wanted to point out a couple of landmarks to keep our eye on as we discuss this sort of thing, some specific points about this proposal, and then what to do about it. And one of the things that I think is important to say is that the BLM, as an agency, I have some serious issues with them, have for a long time, haven't hesitated to say so. But a lot of the personnel, the people that are at the BLM, are some very hardworking, knowledgeable people. Jeff Dose, Nancy Duncan, and just a host of other people have done superlative effort in a hostile situation. So I don't want this to appear as any sort of personal attack on anybody working at the BLM. The second thing I think is really important to keep our mind on is that the issue is not harvesting timber. It's not making money, earning a living in the woods. It's clear cutting. And the narrow approach to what's of value that has been the dominant voice in our political discussions, but it's not cutting timber. It's not realizing the wealth of the forest. And what Ann was talking about is expanding our perception of what is of value. Top of the list is water. And just as an aside, you want some history, Ann? In the 80s, I was on the Tourism Development Board. And we discussed a number of things that could be done to develop visitor time and the beauty and the virtues that we have here. We identified 3 roads of significant scenic value. Roseburg Lumber Company, Sun Studs, and the Bureau of Land Management went out and clear cut every single road we named. That's when I quit. Cow Creek, where we recently had devastating fires, there's 14 huge clear cuts laid out right on the road, right down to Cow Creek. And so the real issue is the politics of it, and what we have to do to change that, and that's what to do about it. There's two other points that I think are significant before we can understand what we're looking at here. One is that while we have been standing up about these forest issues and the ONC proposals that Congressman DeFazio dreamed up under the supervision of the Douglas County Commissioners, is that we have also been standing up about a proposed gas pipeline that is equally as devastating, equally as backroom snake deal, and a proposed LNG export terminal at Coos Bay. That's one of a pantheon of energy exporting issues that are extremely significant and have very long-range considerations for the people of the Northwest. But we've been battling this stupid pipeline too, and it's a backroom deal. Where the other thing is the News Review, God bless their pointy little heads, only tells half the story. They tell the story that the commissioners want heard, and the Douglas timber operators want heard, that they repeat over and over and over and over again. And one of the big dumb things that they constantly suggest is that this is some of the primest timberland in Oregon. North of here, towards the coast, maybe, but not south of here. And this BLM ONC land we're discussing was high-graded by the timber barons when the railroads had it back at the turn of the 20th century. And it was such a huge scandal back in those days that the land was taken away from the railroads. But first of all, anything of value was spoken for. And the history of this can be found in a book called ONC Lands, the BLM's $1 billion checkerboard. I won't go into it except to say this is fragile ground and rocky ground, the ground that the timber industry didn't want to take. That fragility makes the value of this land almost beyond the calculation of money. Not only is it critical watershed, but the complexity in the forest of the microbes and the flowers and the bugs and the creatures that inhabit the place that these forests create. Go out and find yourself a mossy old log that's all about 2/3 rotten, and take axe and bust the bark open and dig in there, and it will be wet. There will be incredible plant and animal communities in there. And I forget who, you might remember, Ken, I don't know whether it was Johnson or who, but they said that the complexity of the forest isn't something that we can't understand. We can't comprehend the complexity. And that is of incalculable value, because once gone, no amount of money can replace it. One of a number of the points that Ann Dorsey made is that this is beautiful, and it's got clean water. And the destruction of clean water is one of the primary faults among numerous faults of clear cutting. And it is a clear correlation between clear cutting and the temperature of our streams rising and the destruction of salmon habitat. But it wasn't always that way. And back when I first was getting involved in this in the 70s, the issues were sustained yield. We'd cut saw timber forever. Forever! We'd never run out. And we'd have multiple use. Gravel, mining, fishing, tourism, grazing, and timber. And over the years, they have just clear cut and clear cut and cut and cut and bought and cheated and cut and logged it out. And now They're not even pimping jobs. They're not saying this will create jobs because they know that we'll nail them. The jobs have been automated, and they've been automated in the woods. This isn't about jobs. The big excuse now is what we need to keep our counties going. Well, the counties need to do what other counties do and quit spending so much money and think about what is of real essence here and develop some other ideas of how we can earn the money it takes to run anything. The industry has over-harvested. They did not live up to their promises. They cut way more timber than what could be grown back. And for all this time, they've been saying, we know what we're doing. We're growing timber. Okay, where is it? Oh, you know where? It's on the dock at Coos Bay. I forgot. They're exporting it for the money. They don't care about anything but their fast buck in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. And that's what DeFazio's scheme is all about. Keeping Roseburg Lumber and Weyerhaeuser and then the big boys running for a few more years. The fire that recently occurred in South County. It's difficult to stand here and say much as a firm point because we haven't had a chance to get down in there and take a look. I've talked to several people that have been down in there though, and it is devastation. And this reprod timber went up like a Roman candle. And so the kind of harvesting that and Chamberlain's talking about, and that these photographs show, when the timber, and they do go up and replant, but when that monoculture is probably 10 feet tall, they spray it. And that sprayed brush is tinder dry, and that's what burned up in this fire in South County. We need to take a real careful look at that and not let the industry say we need to get in there and salvage the timber, because any timber they can salvage is what survived the fire. So anyway, you guys have had to listen to me rant and rave on several occasions, so I'll cut to the chase. You know, what you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I have not seen Wyden's proposal, so I think it's still possible to lobby Wyden. And one of the best ways to do that is to skin Peter DeFazio alive. I can remember when Jim Weaver was our congressman, and we had problems with the BLM, Jim Weaver would send people from Eugene down here to straighten it out. I know at least 8, if not 12 people who worked for Jim Weaver went on to run for other public office. Peter DeFazio is one of them. He came to work for Jim Weaver as his chief of staff. Who has Peter DeFazio, or Ron Wyden for that matter, groomed? What young person have they groomed to run for office? And we're down here right now trying to figure out who to run for county commissioner, who to run for state legislature. We don't really have anybody. How many sweetheart jobs did Susan Morgan enjoy before she got a sweetheart job at the legislature? Now she's ensconced at the county commission. Why don't the Democrats do that? This Peter DeFazio needs to be told to his face. We need to write letters to the editor. We need to tell him every chance we get, this is bad politics, bad policy, bad economics, bad faith. The last time I was at the Bureau of Land Management office, we had worked for a year and a half on this collaborative forestry proposal. And there was a lot of hard work went into that, a lot of good ideas. And while we were busy doing that, Peter DeFazio was in the back room with the Douglas timber operators and the Douglas County commissioners dreaming up this ONC scheme. So I wrote down 7 things to do about it. Number 1, email Wyden. Call him on the phone. Be a nuisance. Tell off DeFazio. Do it in public. Write letters to the editor, and not just the News Review, to the Register Guard and the Oregonian, and Willamette Week, and the Eugene Weekly. Let him know that he's not popular. encourage someone to run against him in a Democratic primary, and if that happens, he is in real trouble. Then he's going to be rushing down here to be one-on-one and share the love. Well, I've already seen his style, and it's time for him to go. The other thing, this is an icky topic, but until we change the political structure and policies in this state, we're going to just keep showing up like this and taking a lot of valuable time to discuss policy mismanagement and get nowhere. We need to invest the Democratic Party and go to the Flagel dinner, show up to events, and tell these guys we want things done different. And I think the key to that, too, is to say what we want is the full restoration of the salmon. Now, the spotted owl is important, and there are a lot of significant issues with the spotted owl as a indicator species of the condition of the forest. But the salmon needs clean water. People come here to fish for salmon. And we have done a huge amount of work, including the timber industry, that has gone a long ways to restore the salmon. This ONC proposal will undo a lot of that work. But the restoration of salmon is an economic leader. It's an economic force, and that's not unreasonable. It's something that the general public will say, yeah, you know, I want to catch fish, and I don't want logging that would harm the fish. I mentioned this already, we need letters to the editor. They don't need to be long or complicated, but get to the point and call Kitzhaber and DeFazio failures. We need to bring it to Eugene and Portland. The people up there do care, but they're unaware of what's going on in Roseburg that is the source of this pussy little political sore. The issue is clear cutting. The issue is mismanagement of the woods. The jobs are found in selective harvest. The jobs are found restoring the fish. The jobs and the business is centered on the natural beauty of this incredible place we live that's being devoured by a handful of industrialists. We need to speak up for prosperity instead of a fast buck. We need to speak up for a process that includes public citizens in instead of including them out. We need to insist that these decisions are made in public and not in the back room. So I've been down here making a nuisance of myself for a long time. You had 15 minutes of it today, and I deeply appreciate it. I think in time we must win because, frankly, they've overcut. And at some point, there's an end to it.
Thank you, Richie. I have to add on to that point about the salmon, which could do, I've done calculations, everybody can sit down and do those calculations and see if we have a restored salmon, a restored wild salmon population anywhere near historic levels, we would have a huge industry, a sustainable industry. And that is really key, and frankly, I know very few people in all the places I've talked to and been around who don't totally agree to that. Everybody agrees to that. But definitely, Wyden's and DeFazio's plans would harm that, would take that opportunity away